Did you know that the woman's body after 65 is undergoing profound transformations that most people, including many doctors, avoid commenting? Have you ever wondered why, as you get older, so many women feel that they are disappearing in the eyes of society, even while they wage daily battles with drastic changes in their body, mind, and emotions? No one talks about it. No one prepares you for what happens to the elderly woman after 65. But today, this will change. What if I told you that these changes are not just physical? Do they directly affect self-esteem, emotional balance, sleep quality, sex life, and even relationships with children and grandchildren? And if I revealed you that while many see this phase like the beginning of the end, the truth is that it can be the beginning of a new way of living, since the woman knows what is happening inside her own body? There is a silent reality behind female aging, a reality marked by invisible hormonal changes, pain that is not taken seriously by symptoms confused with age of age, changes in mood, memory loss, muscle weakening, urinary problems, vaginal dryness, difficulty sleeping. All of this is often ignored, silenced, standardized, as if the woman stopped importing after a certain age. The most serious? It is that these transformations affect millions of women, but very few have access to correct information, sensitive medical advice, and emotional support. The elderly woman often carries the weight of an invisible transition alone. We heard about menopause, but what about after it? What really happens to the woman's body after 65? Female aging remains a taboo, surrounded by myths, prejudice, and neglect. Therefore, in this video, we will break the silence and expose what is behind this so ignored phase of women's life. Let's talk about the health of the elderly, about the impact of estrogen fall, the increased risk of diseases such as osteoporosis, urinary incontinence, and even depression. Let's understand why so many women feel forgotten and how we can change this reality. You will find out, for example, that many of the physical and emotional symptoms that arise after 65 are not just natural aging, but signs that the body is asking for help. Let's talk about hormonal functions that continue to impact the body even years after menopause, and why ignore this can directly affect mental health, daily energy, and female vitality. If you have a mother, grandmother, aunt, or even if you are a woman who has arrived or about to arrive at that age, this video is for you. It's time to give voice to those who have been silenced for decades. It is time to show that female aging deserves respect, attention, and above all, information. But before you continue, leave here in the comments. Have you noticed any of these changes to someone in your family, or even in you? What kind of guidance have you ever received about this phase of life? Share with us, because what comes next will surprise you, and maybe even free you from beliefs you carry for years. And now that you understood the silence around this theme, it's time to dive deep into the real changes that the woman's body and mind face after 65 years. Comment down here. Have you been through any similar situation? Do you know a woman, maybe your mother, your grandmother, your mother-in-law, who have been facing these transformations without knowing exactly what is happening? Sharing these experiences can help other people who are living the same reality in silence. Your story, your doubt, or even your simple comment can open the eyes of someone who is feeling alone in this process. And look, if this content is making sense to you, if you think this conversation needs to get to more people, then leave your like here now. This shows to YouTube that this video is important, that it deserves to be delivered to more people, especially for women who are at this time in life, or to family members who can support them better. Also enjoy and subscribe to the channel. Here we talk openly about topics that almost no one has the courage to address: women's health and maturity, aging with dignity, prevention of invisible diseases, real life quality. Activate Tu Niño, because in the next videos, I will show you practical strategies to deal with these changes, habits that can transform female health and well-being after 60 and the best, simply and accessible. You deserve clear, direct, and without taboo information. And if this video has touched you in any way, share it with someone who needs to hear it, because when we talk about what no one has the courage to say, the GENTE changes realities. Now it's time to understand what exactly these changes that occur in the elderly woman's body. Why do they happen, and what can be done to face them with conscience and health? Let's go together. After menopause, many women report that they feel forgotten. not only by family members or society in general, but also for health systems themselves. Faster consultations, generic diagnoses, lack of real listening, as if female aging were just a biological detail, not a deep process, full of physical, emotional, and social nuances. It is as if, in the eyes of the world, after 65 the woman lost relevance, lose voice, lose space. But the reality is quite different, because the woman's body does not stop changing at 60, 65, or 70 years. Quite the contrary. It is precisely at this stage that many biological changes gain intensity. And when these changes are not understood, or worse, they are ignored, they can directly compromise the quality of life. The elderly woman, who has often dedicated decades of life taking care of children, grandchildren, family, work, now faces a new battle: to understand what is happening to her own body when no one else seems to care about it. Have you ever noticed how to find videos, articles, or even doctors talking about the health of the elderly? There is a huge silence around what happens to the female body after 65. Falling muscle mass, increased visceral fat, decreased estrogen levels that directly affect brain function, changes in libido, vaginal dryness, intestinal rhythm, insomnia, anxiety, memory lapses. All this is happening with thousands of women every day, but almost no one is talking about it. And then the trigger of social invisibility comes in. Because while old men are still seen as wise, active figures, often even admired by aging, the woman is often pushed into a place of silence and devaluation. And this is not just a matter of social perception. This directly affects the way women's health is treated. Exams are postponers, complaints are minimized, diagnoses are neglected. How many women have heard from a professional, "This is normal for age," without even receiving a decent explanation of what is happening to his body? And here is an important fact. According to recent studies, the risk of diseases such as osteoporosis, stroke, heart disease, and urinary incontinence increases dramatically after 65 years. And yet, these issues are not dealt with the seriousness they deserve. Osteoporosis, for example, can start silent and cause serious fractures. The woman who falls and breaks her hip at 70-75 often does not receive prior guidance on how to strengthen bones, how to improve bone density with specific food and exercise, or how to make a safe hormone replacement. Urinary incontinence, which is a very common complaint among older women, is often treated as a joke or with that old advice outdated: put a diaper and follow life. But this affects self-esteem, social life, mobility. It makes many women stop leaving home, going to the market, visiting a friend, all for fear of embarrassing. This needs to change. It needs to be spoken. It needs to be faced with information, welcome, and practical solutions. Another ignored question is the cognitive impacts. With the hormone fall and the advance of age, many women begin to notice memory failures, difficulty of concentration, changes in reasoning. Instead of investigating hormonal or neurological causes, many professionals simply attribute this to natural aging, as if it were something that cannot be avoided, that you can't treat. But it gives. With quality information, proper guidance, and the right support, it is possible to keep your mind active, balanced mental health, and emotional well-being. And speaking of emotional health, loneliness is another very serious point and very little approached. After 65, many women face the loss of partners, friends, the distance of their children, the feeling that they are no longer necessary. This profoundly affects mental health. Studies show that chronic loneliness can be as harmful as smoking, increasing the risk of depression, dementia, and heart disease. Still, psychological support programs aimed at this age group are rare. Rare the spaces where the elderly can talk about their pains, their fears, their desires. And the most shocking is that many of these changes could be prevented, softened, or treated much more effectively if there was a more close, more human, and more up-to-date look at women's health at this stage of life. But there is no. But that there is still the outdated idea that after a certain age the woman no longer has to take care of herself. Or worse, that it is no longer worth investing in her health. This is cruel, this is unfair, and that is why this video exists. To break the silence, to bring light, to inform. Because the more you understand what is happening to your body, or the body of someone you love, the more you have decision-making power. But you can act, but you can prevent, and more you can live this phase with health, dignity, and autonomy. So answer me one thing. Why no one talks about it? Why is it so difficult to find a space where these conversations happen without judgment, without labels, without taboo? Is it because there is still a lot of prejudice with female aging? Is it because the market no longer sees value in taking care of the health of the elderly? Is it because there is a mistaken belief that after 65 all that remains is to wait for time to pass? Well, not here. Here we talk about it, yes. Here we expose what many hide. Here we respect women at all stages of life. And if you arrived here in this video, it is because you also believe it is time to change this reality. It's time to understand, welcome, and act. Because knowledge is power, and with it you can transform your life, or someone very close to you. Now, before we continue and dive further into the specific transformations that the woman's body faces after 65, I want to make a request. If this video is touching you, if you are recognizing situations you have ever lived or witnessed, leave a comment below. It can be a simple phrase like, "I also felt invisible," or "My mother is going through it," or even, "I want to understand more about what happens after menopause." Your comments help spread this message and show that this subject matters. Yes. Enjoy and write here which part that has caught your attention so far. And if you want, it comments with the word respect to show that you also support more visibility and dignity for the health of the elderly. Let's continue, because what comes next will surprise you even more. If you are here so far, it is because you already understand that the health of the elderly needs to be taken seriously, needs to be spoken clearly, respect, and depth. And when we talk about what really happens to the woman's body and mind after age 65, you can't ignore the shocking transformations that occur silently but extremely impactful. And no, it's not an exaggeration. These are changes that affect the quality of life at all levels: physical, emotional, mental, and even social. And precisely for this reason, they need to be known and understood. After all, how can you deal with something you didn't even know was happening? The first and perhaps most underestimated of these changes is the abrupt drop in estrogen levels. Estrogen, female hormone par excellence, does not only influence the menstrual cycle or fertility, it plays a fundamental role in cognitive, emotional, and neurological functions. This is why many women, when entering the postmenopausal, report memory lapses, mental confusion, difficulty concentration, and even sudden mood changes. There is even an unofficial but very real term, the mental mist of menopause. But the problem is that it does not stop when menopause ends. At 65, 70, 75, this hormonal deficit continues to affect the woman's brain, and with it, the risk of neurodegenerative diseases, such as Alzheimer's, increases considerably. Yes, estrogen has a neuroprotective function, and when it disappears, the woman's brain loses part of her natural defense. This directly impacts memory, emotional stability, and mental clarity. And unfortunately, many women don't even imagine that constant forgetfulness or sudden irritability may have a hormonal cause, still active and ignored. Another critical and very common change is the progressive and accelerated loss of muscle mass, a process called sarcopenia. After age 65, the woman loses not only strength but at all muscle structure. This affects mobility, stability, and independence. Simple activities such as climbing a stairs, getting up from a chair, or carrying a bag now requires more effort. Worse, this silent muscle loss increases the risk of severe falls, fractures, and physical limitations. Many women, realizing that they are weaker, stop moving, which further aggravates the situation. It is a cycle that needs to be interrupted with information, incentive to adapted exercise, and proper diet. But again, almost no one speaks of it seriously. And then we arrived at a delicate point: changes in the urinary system and sexuality. This is where many women feel ashamed to speak, and where society a veil of even heavier silence. But that is precisely why we need to talk, because these changes are real, painful, and profoundly affect female self-esteem. The hormonal fall tuns the tissues of the bladder and urethra, which causes urinary incontinence, that involuntary escape of urine by coughing, sneezing, or even laughing. Along with this comes vaginal dryness, reduced natural lubrication, pain during sex, loss of sensitivity, and often the complete abandonment of sex life. But this is not inevitable. There are forms of treatment, there are natural resources and doctors that can help. But if the woman does not know that this is common and treatable, she will continue to suffer in silence, thinking it is just ages of age. Another very common and ignored transformation is the change in sleep quality. Sleeping well becomes a challenge. The woman wakes up several times at night, can't reach deep sleep, begins the tired, irritated day, without energy. This chronic insomnia directly affects mood, concentration, the willingness for everyday activities. And all this is related to the hormonal decline, the metabolism that slows, the stress accumulated over the years, and, once again, with the lack of information on how to improve this aspect naturally or with the right follow-up. A poor quality sleep ends, and over time, impacts even immunity and cardiovascular health. And finally, one of the most dangerous and silent changes of all, the high risk of emotional isolation and depression. The woman who has spent a lifetime taking care of others often finds herself alone, with grown children, the absent or deceased partner, and with very few active social bonds. This gradual removal of social life is not a choice. It is a consequence of a number of factors ranging from physical limitations to the feeling that it is no longer useful to anyone. And this loneliness, when prolonged, can destroy emotionally. It affects appetite, memory, the will to live. Depression in older women is underdiagnosed because symptoms often get confused with tiredness, passing melancholy, with that normal discouragement of age. But it is not normal, and should not be treated as such. These 5 changes, the neurological impact of hormonal fall, sarcopenia, urinary and sexual disorders, sleep degradation and emotional loneliness, are part of the reality of millions of women. Women who are still fully capable of living with energy, pleasure, autonomy. But for that, we need to break with this cycle of misinformation, invisibility, abandonment. And I know this content may be being challenging for some people. It may seem heavy. It may even scare. But it is necessary, because only talking openly about this can we bring out real solutions, practices, and paths to change this reality. It is not about accepting suffering as part of aging, but of understanding these changes and acting consciously. There is a quality of life after the 65, but it begins with knowledge. It begins with the courage to look at what nobody wants to see. Now that you understand a little more about these deep transformations, I want to know, have you noticed any of these changes to someone close to you? Or maybe in yourself? Tell me here in the comments. This helps too much to spread this kind of information and gives voice to other women who also need to know that they are not alone. And if any of these parts touched you in a special way, right here, this happens to me, or I need to learn more about it. You can also leave only the word clarity felt that this content opened your mind to something no one had explained before. Let's continue, because what comes now is even more important. If all these transformations so directly impact the physical, mental, emotional, and even social health of the elderly, then the big question is, what can be done to reduce these impacts and offer more quality of life? The good news, and yes, we need to talk about good news too, is that there are ways, practices, and resources that really work when applied with conscience and consistency. The problem is that many women simply don't know this because, as we talk so far, no one teaches, no one guides, no one guides. But the truth is that with some strategic changes, it is possible to minimize the effects of estrogen loss, control sarcopenia, improve sleep, rescue self-esteem, recover energy, and especially feel alive again. It all starts with the base, food. The elderly woman's body has very specific needs. It no longer responds to the same foods that worked well decades before. Metabolism is slower, nutrient absorption is prodded, and, at the same time, physiological needs increase. Therefore, it is essential to adopt a functional diet, rich in natural phytoestrogens, substances found in some vegetables that have estrogen-like action in the body. They do not replace the hormone itself, but help modulate their functions by offering relief to various symptoms of menopause and postmenopausal. Organic soy, golden flaxseed, chickpeas, seeds such as chia and sesame, cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli, kale, and cabbage, all these foods should be present regularly on the plate. In addition, it is essential to ensure good sources of protein, especially high-absorption proteins such as eggs, fish, and legumes combined with whole grains. This directly helps in preventing muscle loss, which is one of the major challenges after age 65. Without enough protein, The body cannot regenerate tissues or keep the muscles active. And this is not luxury, it is a physiological need. But it is no use eating well if the body remains inactive. The practice of adapted physical activity is another fundamental pillar for women's health at this stage of life. And here, the key word is balance. Literally, exercises that work strength, posture, and balance are the most suitable for women from 65 because they help prevent falls, strengthen muscles, protect joints, and, in breach, still improve mood and self-esteem. Daily walks, light functional training, yoga, Pilates, elastic exercises, water aerobics, all can be adapted to each woman's reality and ability. It doesn't have to be exhaustive or painful. On the contrary, physical exercise needs to be pleasurable, constant, and above all, accessible. When the body moves regularly, the brain also balances, anxiety decreases, sleep improves, and the cardiovascular system strengthens. And this is not motivational discourse. It is science. It is real health. But even with good diet and physical activity, there is still a point that cannot be ignored: emotional health. The elderly woman faces losses, changes, silences, absences, and you can't pretend it doesn't affect. Therefore, psychological follow-up becomes not only recommended, but often indispensable. Talking about your pains, fears, frustrations, expectations, desires, and even aging conflicts is an essential step in keeping your mind healthy. Many women carry old trauma, poorly resolved wounds, to blame for others always in the first place. And now, in maturity, all this comes to light. Having a space for professional listening, where it can express itself without judgment, with welcoming and strategic guidance, makes all the difference. In addition, it is essential to strengthen social bonds. Having who to talk to, laugh, go out for a walk, have a coffee, have a support network. Solitude cannot be naturalized as part of old age. She needs to be fought with empathy and presence. Another point that needs to be approached seriously is the possibility of hormonal treatments and natural therapies. Many women are afraid of hormone replacement or do not even consider this option because they associate with risks that do not always apply to your case. When done with individualized medical follow-up, updated examinations, and strict control, the use of bioid hormones can dramatically improve the quality of life. More energy, improvement in lubrication, restorative sleep, mental clarity, heat control, bone protection. Of course, not every woman can or should use this type of therapy. Therefore, the evaluation must always be personalized. And even for those that cannot make traditional hormone replacement, there are natural alternatives such as use of phytohormones, essential oils, medicinal teas, and specific supplements that help modulate the effects of hormone deficiency. But all this needs technical guidance. It is not about self-medication. It is about seeking qualified help. And that is precisely why regular consultation with geriatricians and gynecologists who have updated knowledge about the health of the elderly is a key piece in this process. Unfortunately, not all professionals are prepared to look at this phase with the attention it deserves. Often the complaints of the elderly woman are reduced to the age, as we have already said. But there is a medicine focused on healthy aging, active longevity, to maintain female autonomy. Preventive consultations, periodic exams, hormonal assessment, osteoarticular checkup, metabolic follow-up all should be part of the care routine. Caring for health is not luxury, it is responsibility, and each woman has the right to receive quality information and decent service. That is why everything we are talking about here has immense value. Put what information transforms. And when you understand what is happening to your body, or the body of someone you love, you stop being afraid. You empower yourself. You start making more conscious choices. And especially you realize that you are not alone. Now I want to know about you. Are any of these practices I said here are already part of your routine or the routine of any woman you know? If so, share here in the comments, and if not, tell me, what would you like to start applying? Write here below phrases like, I want to start taking more care of my diet, or I need more emotional balance. And if you felt that this content opened your mind, comments the word change. This helps too much to spread this message and show that the health of the elderly woman needs to be respected. Let's go, because there is more that you need to find out yet. If you stayed with me here, it is because this content has made sense to you, and I really want to thank you for that. because they are people like you who help this kind of information reach more people. So if you have reached the end of this video, enjoy and subscribe to the channel right now, because here we will continue to talk openly about everything that no one has the courage to say about the body and health of the ripe woman. Enjoy and leave your like too. This simple gesture shows to YouTube that this video is important and helps it to be delivered to more women who need to hear this message. And oh, tell me here in the comments, which of these changes caught the most attention today? Or if you want something simple and straightforward, comment below the word clarity, just for me to know that you stayed until the end and that this video really helped you understand better what is happening with the female body after 65. And before you leave, don't forget to click on the next video that is appearing on the screen now. It will complement everything you have learned here today and show you more practical strategies to take care of you or those you love. I see you there.